Hello there, Hawkeye fans, and welcome to the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast here on hawkfanatic.com. It is Thursday, June the 22nd, about 9:15 a.m. Central Time. I am Rob Howe from parts all over the place, joined by Scott Docterman from The Athletic. As always, our second pod this week, and plenty to talk about. As we were talking about before recording, there really is no more off-season or downtime when it comes to Iowa athletics. You've got just so many different aspects of what we cover now and what you folks are interested in. So obviously it gives us plenty of content for this podcast, and we'll have plenty to talk about today, from recruiting. Got Hawkeye football player interviews yesterday, NBA draft tonight with Chris Murray. The Iowa men's basketball team announced their foreign trip. We got a little baseball, transfer news, transfer out instead of in, not the best news for Iowa. And then wanted to congratulate Matt Weitzel over at the University of Iowa. He is the new sports information director. I know they've got all kinds of fancy names for it now, Scott, but he's the sports information director now. Like, there's beat reporters that, you know, the jobs change a little bit and you have different responsibilities, but he is in charge of the sports information department at Iowa now, taking over for the retiring Steve Rowe. And excellent choice. Matt and I came in around a similar time. I started in 97 and he was late 90s, early 2000s. So I've known Matt for about 20 plus years. Good guy, good worker. And Iowa did well with this hire, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, Rob, when you think about it. The first four SIDs lasted 99 years. I mean, and they're all four Hall of Famers, and they all four were tremendous for the department. And, you know, all of them had, you know, including White's, had been had put in like 20 years plus roughly before they became the SID, or, you know, now the Associate Athletics Director for Strategic Communications.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, but in either way, it's it's an incredible honor for him, and he acknowledged it as such on Twitter, that the privilege for him to follow, those people. And, and it's an ever changing climate, and he's not had an easy run necessarily, with basketball, with men's basketball, because, however you feel about Fran, he can be a handful, managing messages and things. I mean, he's had some, there's been some challenging situations, no question, that he's had to deal with. So, he'll take over for football when Steve hangs it up in a little less than 2 weeks now. And so with Matt, that's an incredible responsibility and an ever changing department. And I'm anxious to see how he's able to take over, because it's a daunting responsibility. And then when you look at the history of it, I mean, and that's a weird thing. We talk about Iowa with athletic director, that for 53 years they've had 2 or 3, but to have 4 over 99 years. And
yeah, you think about that, sports information director, athletic director, head football coach. I mean, they're just, if you're looking for stability in your life in those professions, Iowa's the place to be.
Exactly. It's crazy how unreal it is, but anyway, it's, you're seeing the changes. And I know I had a question. Somebody asked, wasn't this a position that somebody would want to wait for until they hire the new athletic director? I'm like, no, that's not what we're talking about here. And if the new athletic, it's basically an at-will position anyway. If the new athletic director, whether it's Beth Gatz or it's anybody else, wants to walk in and make changes, they can.
Yeah,
but because none of the previous ones came in with a specific AD who handled that. So, but still, great, great promotion there for Big Whites, and he'll probably be the tallest SID nationally, I would think.
Yeah, I always used to joke with him and Scott Chipman from the Big Ten, which guy was taller. They both claimed they were taller, but they were both very tall, a lot taller than me, and probably would make a good front line in basketball. So good segue for this, and we can start with this, Scott, is into player availability yesterday when we saw Matt and Steve and the guys over there yesterday at the atrium in the football complex. Got a nice group of players, some, nice mix of new guys and returning guys. And, I think the main storyline out of that was the summer trip. Actually, it wasn't even the summer, I guess, because yesterday was the first day of summer officially, but a trip to California with new quarterback Cade McNamara and some skill position players, and then Joe Evans weaseling his way into the trip as well. I'll let you talk more. I think you dug into this a little bit more than I did yesterday, but basically, what I thought was cool was the NIL paid for this for the most part, and made it very attractive for these guys. And we think about the NIL, and we'll talk more about this with baseball, as being a way to get kids into the program, but it really is about winning. It's trying to get a way to win, and this is a really good investment in trying to develop your offense and having the NIL contribute to that.
Oh yeah, to me that's the most intriguing NIL story that I've heard really since this whole thing has taken off a couple of years ago, and that is, you have the ability to take trips, and they'll pay for it, and this has got really 50-50 ability for Iowa, which is it's a combination of you can bond on the field and work out and throw routes and do all those things. And yes, you can do that in Iowa City, but it's different when you're going to some place. But then too, you're also able to, to bond off the field. And when, I ran this down yesterday. I mean, first of all, back it up, Cade McNamara has been going to Jordan Palmer for, since he was in 8th grade. And Jordan is widely considered a quarterback guru. I mean, a ton of NFL quarterbacks go there and work with him on fundamentals and those types of things.
Is he an XFL guy now? Does he work with the XFL too? Maybe I have him mixed up with somebody else. Sorry.
I don't know. I know individually he works with a lot of quarterbacks, and he's Carson Palmer's brother. And so Cade goes there. He was planning to go there anyway. And then he throws to receivers while he's there. And he's like, this would be a good opportunity for me to work with my guys while I'm out there. And so, he started talking to them, started talking to the, had Brad Heinrichs, the CEO of the collective, the Swarm Collective. And they figured it out that, basically as long as I think they pay for a plane ticket, that they're there. And so you've got, and you start looking at the new guys that they have, the holdovers, and then the injuries. When you have, Eric All is still working back from a back injury. Seth Anderson missed the spring with a hammy. Nico was hurt with a foot. Caleb Brown had just committed to Iowa, and Jacob Bostic had been hurt for almost the entire time he's been on campus. Mm-hmm. So it's like, wow, this is an opportunity for them to get together, get to know each other, and work out and kind of start to feel each other out on the field and get coached, because you can't have coaching, during summer. And the receivers worked with TJ Hushmanzada, who's a tremendous receiver. I know you're probably laughing because of Seth Anderson.
I was laughing, at the interview we had, you and I together with Seth Anderson. What did he say? He couldn't pronounce his name or couldn't remember what it was?
He couldn't pronounce his name. It was like TJ. He played with Chad Ochocinco, and I'm like, Hushmanzada? Yeah, that's it. I'm like,
who's your mama?
Yeah, who's your mom?
You and I were the only one that got that joke. He was looking at us like, what are these old dudes talking about?
I know. And I'm like, he was really good, he was the only, and then I'm like, bringing up, I'm like, the one thing he did do right well was, he took the terrible towel and like stepped on it. And then like the next week, like Carson Palmer got his knee blown out and stuff.
Bad mojo, man.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, to be able to do that and then have the collective pay for the trip and to have a bonding experience and to learn and to be well coached, and that to me is one of the best things I've ever heard for NIL. I haven't heard another school really do anything like that, and I could be wrong. There could be a couple that have, and I look like a doofus, but I do think overall for Iowa and what it experienced in the spring and the newcomers. Tremendous opportunity for them. And yeah, that's what I wrote about for today.
Yeah, and I don't want to disparage Joe Evans, who I like a lot. I don't want to call him a weasel. He is, for those that don't know, he and Cade McNamara have gotten very close, and that's how Joe kind of got himself into this thing. And he was the coordinator of strength and conditioning out there, and he kind of tied everything together. So Joe was not just there freeloading. He did some work, or at least, acted like he was doing some work.
It is interesting, and I can't wait to talk to Joe about this whenever we get a chance to, next month or in August. And
great kid, man.
Yeah,
he's a really great kid to be around. Very genuine.
Yeah, I mean, Ames quarterback walks on at Iowa, beats out two legitimate players. I thought to be kind of an edge rusher, and you had Jalen McDonald. Jake McCollum, I'm sorry, and the linebacker. Oh my gosh, I forgot his name. Big squatter. As an edge rusher, and becomes last 2 years tied for the team lead in sacks, and he and Cade didn't like, or he didn't like Cade at the very beginning, and then they're like inseparable. They're best friends. Cade says he's the best friend he ever had. And that's like, wow, that's crazy. Joe Evans, defensive end from Ames, Iowa, who's, is now best friends with the former Michigan quarterback from Reno.
I like that dynamic, though, to have, two of your team leaders on opposite sides of the ball being friends. That's, to me, that dynamic works really well when you have, you don't have just the guys, a group of guys leading the offense, group of guys leading the defense. Those two will do that, but they also together can lead the whole group. And I kind of like that dynamic.
Yeah, I do too. And I don't know what you think, Rob, but the more I'm around Cade, the more I can see the positives that he has. I mean, you always kind of wonder when you bring in a guy who's been accomplished at a different school, what's his vibe? Is he going to come in? You wonder if there's a conceit level or that type of thing. And I haven't seen any of that. I see a guy who is committed, is very much focused on the team aspect, and his teammates seem to like him, and seem to rally around him, and that's a good thing, because whatever Spencer's detriments were on the field, I think people respected him, but that only goes for a little while until after and if you don't produce, then that kind of changes. But I think Cade has got a different level of respect already, and of course then you got to produce on the field, which I think matters. But I like the vibe that they've got right now.
He seems to be settling in. Each time we talk to him, he seems a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more open with us, which is basically open with you guys that are listening. He's giving us material so we can report to you guys and get to know him a little bit more. And I agree with the team aspect. He was talking about how early he gets into the facility yesterday, and he said that Mason Richmond is the only one that beats him usually in, like, we're talking like 5 a.m. And I said, well, it must make you feel good that your left tackle is beating you in. And instead, he took it as an opportunity to praise Mason and the offensive line, which I was like, that's a leader. That's somebody who says, I'm going to pump my guys up. I'm going to, talk about how good they are and talk about how hard they work. And that is contagious, and that is great for team chemistry and bonding. And you're right. They got to go out and do it this fall. But we talked to Seth Anderson yesterday as well, as we were talking about it. He had said he thinks this offense has a chance to be special, which I immediately latched on. So what makes you feel that way? And he said he feels like they have the pieces if they can put it together. And that's kind of where we are, right, Scott? We looked at the additions that they made through the transfer portal, and we're like, all right, now they have some pieces. Can they put it all together? It sounds, at least from those guys, like it feels like it's coming together.
Yeah. And I mean, to have those vibes, that's all they are now. I mean,
Right.
you know, they could throw against air and look good doing it, and their athletic ability shows against nobody out there.
Yeah.
But you got to feel that way too, you know. And it in some ways, last year I would say that it was kind of like wishful thinking, that you could tell that they're trying to feel excited. Maybe they are individually, but you know,
Almost trying to convince themselves
yeah, right. And
us
yeah, and us,
that things were going to get better on offense, and they just snowballed and got worse.
right. It was, you know, I know I use this guy all the time as kind of the whipping boy for this, but it's kind of like Lick in going into his last year, comparing himself to Seabiscuit, you know, and it's like, you know, well, and we're ready to turn a corner, and it turned into a wall. And in some ways, the
we're
offense,
making you into glue.
yeah, there was a lot of glue this offseason in the horse racing biz, but I know.
Yeah, I'm disappointed in that. The sport I enjoyed growing up is not what it used to be. But anyway.
Yeah, I digress. But you know, I feel like that they are excited to work with one another, and that is a positive. This point in the year, and we're all kind of in the same mindset of, you got to prove it to us before we start selling it. You know, it's like, you know, Iowa's offense is going to be great this year. Well, let's see, let's wait. But I do think right now, when you look at you know, when you have Seth Anderson talking the way he did, and I don't see any, you know, I heard about last year, but I don't see any of those issues. And we talk about, you know, and the triangle, if you will, of the people that, you know, you brought up and that work with Cade, you know, when you talk about Cade McNamara, left tackle, Mason Richmond, holdover, offensive line that struggled last year, had surgery this offseason, and defensive end Joe Evans. You know, they all came from different places, and they're all on a similar wavelength, which is committed, focused, you know, work together, you know, good vibes. That goes a long way. And the other aspect I did talk to Kate about later on, I'll probably write later this summer about, is just, you know, it's overused all the time, the chip on the shoulder mentality. It's always there. And I cringe when I hear people talk about the haters, the people didn't believe in me and all that kind of stuff. That gets, you know, I've seen 5-stars say nobody believed in me. And I'm like, come on.
Weren't there players on the Georgia football team saying that people didn't believe in them?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You know, and so you're
like,
come on.
The plucky Bulldogs from Georgia
came out of nowhere to win their second straight national title with, you know, some of the best players in the country. But, you know, but with this team, it's truly real. And it's a motivating force you can see. And when you start to look at that momentum, that how it can carry them, when you look at, you know, Cade, transfer quarterback, got beat out, even though he took a team to a Big Ten championship. You look at the offensive line, the woes that they suffered last year. You look at transfers like, you know, another guy who was there, you know, Rusty Feth, you know, Miami of Ohio, transferred, wants to prove himself.
Realize there are 2 Rusties on this team.
And Van Wetzinga.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have 2 Rusties this year. So you can't just refer to Rusty.
Yeah. Well, if Van Wetzinga plays, sure, you know. I did play against his dad, by the way. So who's the head coach at Pleasant Valley.
Where did he play?
At what school? Pleasant Valley.
Oh, he played at Pleasant Valley in high school? Okay. I know he's been the coach there for 15 years.
Yeah, he was only like 5'11", 235, and could hit like a motherfucker. Oh, sorry. You know, hit like a.
That's what I've heard. I heard he was a badass.
He was awesome. And
we'll get to his other son here in a little bit.
Yeah, Joey's probably more in his line, except bigger. Then there's, but you know, the wide receivers have something to prove. You know, Eric All's coming off an injury. You know, so you have all these people with something to prove, and now they're all together, but they're all pulling in the same direction. They all know that their success is tied to team success. And then team success helps them promote themselves individually. So I see this really good vibe. Doesn't mean anything. We won't know that until the fall, but it feels different. And if it feels different to us, it feels different to them. And they're going to at least, I don't see any way they don't improve. And then you talk about the top of the list, Brian Ferentz and Kirk Ferentz. I mean, if there's anybody connected to Iowa football who has something more to prove than Brian Ferentz, I don't know who it is. And then Kirk wants to prove that everybody's, he's right by keeping Brian Ferentz. So it's really an interesting vibe that I'm anxious to see how it all works together on the field, because they've got some pieces that I think that they're better than they've been at certain spots in a while, quarterback and receiver in particular.
Yeah, and you made a really good point when Seth was talking about, Seth Anderson was talking about, being aware of what happened last year and not seeing it. And I kind of also like that freshness of the guys that didn't go through that and experience. They're aware of it, and they're coming in and maybe giving the guys that had to go through that last year or were a part of that last year a different perspective and saying, hey, we can come together and do this. Don't worry about what happened to you guys last year. Don't worry about those scars that you guys have from the critics that were out there last year and how negative everything was around. Let's get away from that. We've come from places where we've had success and done different things. This is how we can move forward and not look back.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why they all have scar tissue, but it's all different, because as you said, whether it's a new start for somebody like Cade McNamara or Seth Anderson, who's coming from an FCS program, or Dejon Parker, who's coming from a Division II program, or Rusty Feth, who's coming from Miami of Ohio. They all have those perspectives of something different. Caleb Brown, for whatever reason why he wanted to change, he did, and now he's got something to prove. And apparently he's done a really nice job already making an impression upon those people. And then you look at the holdovers of Mason Richmond on an offensive line that had struggled, and he had fought through a knee issue really since Northwestern his freshman year, and got it corrected. Now he's out every day. He's there before the crack of dawn getting work. Logan Jones with his snap issues. And I thought what was kind of funny was when Cade said that his first, when he first took a snap from Logan, he could barely move his knee still. And then Logan snapped the ball and it jammed his finger so bad he could barely move it for a week. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly what nobody wants to hear in Iowa. But he's like, we've got to figure it out. And so you start to look at all these pieces, and they're all kind of like what Riley Moss and Jack Campbell referred to last year as the mutts on defense. But on offense, they're truly mutts. And now they're all kind of like building this bond out of the way they were treated or felt treated. And, and again, what's going to matter is what do they do in the second half at Iowa State? What do they do, in 3rd and 5 at Penn State in late September? Those are the things that are going to matter, but they're not playing tomorrow. They're not playing next week or next month. So, what we do is we look at these indicators and think, okay, this has got a chance to be something a little bit better now, today. And if they feel that way, then they feel good about the way they're working out, and that builds confidence, which will be essential for them moving forward.
No doubt. And how they deal with adversity and bumps in the road. And then, theoretically, with this many new pieces, you're thinking to yourself, it's a group that can get better as the year goes on too, as they build chemistry actually in games. So, I feel positive about this, but I'm like you, after last year and kind of buying into improvements that were going to happen last year that didn't. I'm still in the wait and see approach, but at least I'm feeling better waiting and seeing, talking to these guys.
Yeah. Because last year it was almost you try to convince yourself, okay, it should be better because it should be better.
Yeah.
Your quarterback's now a senior. He should be better. Of course, nobody could have foreseen all the injuries at wide receiver in camp. That was just that was a plague. That was
receiver thing, and then the offensive line just never.
Yeah, I mean, you would have, but they were moving guys around, and it just, they had guys who weren't ready, and so you look at it overall, and you think, okay, this is, it was worse than I expected by far. This year will be better. I am 100% sure of that, but because you can't be worse, unless they get left on the runway at, the tarmac at Eastern Iowa for their plane and they don't pick them up, it's going to be better. But, I guess we're all in the show me mode, and we'll believe it. But even then, it's got to be consistent. If you can't win 24-10 or 24-3 against Utah State, and then 17-10 at Ames, yeah, that might feel good, but it's like you got to prove it, and so overall, good vibes, positive feelings. Wait and see on whether or not this will be good or not.
Yeah, it comes down to the Jimmies and the Joes, right?
Yeah.
And how they perform out there, and then the coaches putting them in the proper positions to succeed. And hopefully Brian Ferentz takes another step forward with his play calling and game plans and things like that to hopefully help put these guys in position as well. Simultaneously with these guys getting ready for the season. And again, as Scott said, they can't, Iowa coaches cannot work with them right now during this time of year. So they're doing, other than strength and conditioning, but they're working out together, doing 7-on-7 stuff. Linemen are doing things. And the coaches are very much focused on recruiting, Scott. This is a huge month. It seems like there's a camp almost every day of high school kids coming in and working out, and they're handing out offers here and there. This last weekend, we talked about it a little bit on Monday's podcast. They had the Tailgater, which is for kids with more than a year left in high school for the most part. And then this coming weekend is the big official visit weekend where you have a large group. I think most of the committed kids are in. And then a decent sized group of uncommitted players that are Iowa's top targets. So,
yeah,
I will start, and we talked about Joey Van Wetzinga and Jack Limbaugh. I will add in as well a couple of linemen, in-state linemen in the 25 class that are among the best. I started watching film on them back in the fall. Watched their huddle highlights when I started to hear about these two guys, and they're definitely key recruits in the 25 class. They both camped here on Tuesday, and both were offered when they camped. It was Van Wetzinga's first offer and Limbaugh's fourth offer. I think Limbaugh has Nebraska, Iowa State, and Minnesota or Wisconsin. So these guys are just getting their recruitment started. But this is Iowa's in on them now. Shoot, and Iowa's offered two guys from Algona in the 25 class, and Alex Mansky, who we talked about the other day, and Jack Limbaugh. So this is a good 25 class, Scott. As good as it was in state in 24, I think 25 is better.
I agree. I think so. The 24 class, and Iowa's cleaned up really, other than the top guy, at least right now, Grant Bricks is going somewhere else. But everybody else, but the thing was with the 24 classes, they were all the same guy. They're all 6'1", 2'3" ish, 200 to 220 ish, and try to figure out, okay, are they a safety? Are they a linebacker? Are they a linebacker or are they a safety? That's kind of where they're at right now with 24. 25, they're diverse. They're in different spots. And Van Wetzinga is I've been hearing about him for a while. The younger brother, Rusty, as we know, Rusty the fourth, was going to play fullback here. He had a offer to Southern Illinois, and he flipped on signing day to be a preferred walk-on at Iowa. So that says a lot. I mean, this preferred walk-on class of 23 is outstanding. As good as, there's legitimately 5 guys to me that I think are scholarship guys in the future out of this class. but
And they're
Joey's
doing good work on that in this 24 class too. William Stobie from Waukee, an offensive lineman. They're trying to get him to turn down some FCS and other offers to come here, offensive lineman to come here. Who was the other kid that I was thinking? Oh, Graham Eben, who's in this week on an official visit from Clear Lake. No, he's
from Central Lyon.
Central Line, and Reese Vanderzee, the wide receiver from there, has an offer, and he's in this weekend too for an official visit. But Graham Eben is a really nice player who they're trying to get to walk on, and he has offers as well. So it's a good push that they're starting to get these kids in here ahead of offers from other schools.
Right. At least give them that opportunity, because as we've seen almost every year, 2, 3, 4 walk-ons end up with full rides. And a lot of them have been really good critical players and not just special teamers. I mean, a guy like, you look at a Kyler Schott, but then you look at a Quinn Schulte and all the Jake Gervais and Jack Kerner. I mean, quality starters, guys that have gone on to the NFL in Gervais's case. And, they've been really good players. So, but even so, I mean, right now we know we're more concentrated on 24, 25. And when you look at the diversity of the players, positionally in that time, when you're looking at Joey Van Wetzinga and Mansky, not only Limbaugh, but, Thomas Meyer and Nick Nikolai, or are we going to call him Nick Brooks, from, who moved from Beaufort, Georgia to Cedar Rapids. I mean, those are, Mason Woods, of course, locally. Those are guys you want if they're in, if they're in the Chicago suburbs, or, Hazelwood Central or Blue Springs or Blue Valley Northwest in the Kansas City area, or you want them if they're in Solon, Algona, Clear Lake, wherever. So, these are some really, they've got some really good options, but I also think that they're going to have some battles for probably all of them. Maybe not Mason Woods unless he is, going to visit a lot of places, but,
one of his best friends isn't going to Iowa. Jack
true.
McCaffrey. They grew up together, so maybe Jack is planting the seeds for Mason to spread his wings, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, that's probably another topic for another day. But anyway, I think they're all talented enough where they're going to have other Power Fives really come after them pretty hard. And when you're talking about Pleasant Valley, Michigan State went in there and grabbed a really good player. It's on the border, so Brett Bielema is going to be hitting it hard. Wisconsin's going to be hitting it hard. So you're going to have
Limbaugh's parents are Huskers.
Yeah, right.
His mom was an All-American middle hitter for the Husker volleyball team. If you haven't heard, they're pretty good. Yeah. And his dad played football for Nebraska. So I asked him about that last night, and he said his parents want him to do what's best for him, which is the right thing to say. And I completely believe that. But there's always that, that seed that's planted that he grew up being a Nebraska fan.
Yeah, well, exactly. And it's tough either way, but we saw it. It doesn't always win out. We saw it with Keegan Johnson. His dad was a wide receiver for a championship team, and yet even so, his dad before he transferred, of course, was very emphatic: go where you feel like you fit best. And at that time, it was Iowa. He does reside inside the state of Iowa, and if Iowa continues to do what it needs to do, you do have to take that into effect. I mean, where am I going to grow? And it's not about my heart, it's about my head. And now that said, they've got some pluses on their side that you cannot make up for. But Algona might even be closer to Minneapolis than Iowa.
Probably.
Obviously it's closer to Ames, but Minneapolis isn't that far away. They've got decent reputation for development. So that's going to be a tough one. Algona is not Solon.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to be up there a lot. And, and then you also have like Cooper Buffington, whose brother's coming here, and, Brody Club, from from Clear Creek. He's really good. So
he's got an Iowa State offer. Iowa State's offered club, I think.
yeah,
I've seen him in person pretty much each of his first 2 years, and he's gotten better. He's an interesting prospect for sure.
You got, Waukee kid, Malachi Curvey, he's really good. So, I mean, this is a really deep class coming up, but obviously the one to focus on is, what's coming in this weekend.
Yeah. And it sounds like there's a good chance that Iowa could get a commitment here as soon as Scott and I are done with this podcast. Yeah. Michael Burt, a tight end out of Nebraska, is announcing between Iowa and Nebraska, the two schools he officially visited recently, later today. So by the time you listen to this podcast, there's a good chance that they will have added him to the 24 class. And then if you can somehow secure Eric Carner from Immaculate Conception, Matt Bowen is an assistant coach at that school. He's coming in, really good tight end prospect. That would give you your two tight ends in this 24 class.
Yeah, and then, well, if you have Gavin Hoff,
or maybe one of these guys in the 24 class from Iowa ends up playing tight end too. Maybe that they end up seeing one at Preston Reese, or who knows? It's hard to know when they get in here. It'll be interesting to see how they these guys develop. All really good athletes.
Well, it's interesting when you have two. Michael Burt already visited, and then he went to Nebraska. He's from Omaha. To make this decision, if it's Iowa, which it sounds like it, at least at this point, to make this decision now, it makes it interesting for Iowa when you're bringing in two tight ends, Gavin Hoffman and Eric Carner.
I think Hoffman's going to be a tough one.
Yeah. And so then you start to go, somebody's going to have to be, are you going to take three? And that's not the worst thing you could do. We saw it a few years ago, what happened with, you take Logan Lee first and Jeremiah Meeman, and then you took a late guy from the middle of nowhere named Sam Laporta, and then Logan Lee flips the other side of the ball and's been a stalwart. Meeman decided to transfer, and Sam Laporta ended up with a high second round pick. So, if you do go with three, you're all right, but then it kind of prevents you from, all right, now you probably just go for one, maybe two the next year, or you move somebody or something like that, or expect some attrition. So I would guess my pecking order would be Eric Carner, then Hoffman, but you never know what they might think. I mean, tight ends are really valuable to Iowa in this offense, and they do a great job of producing them. So it's not the worst thing to do to start out with three and then take then take a look after that.
Yeah, and Corner's got really good offers: Alabama, Texas A&M, Florida, Michigan State. I think Iowa's right there for him, and certainly be the case. I think Hoffman is, and I don't want to, ruin the kid's recruitment or do anything, to mess with that, but he is. I think he likes Missouri quite a bit. He's from down there. So that one's going to be tough to get, and Iowa probably knows that. And I think a lot of these tight ends, Scott, are kind of similar, like just in terms of pedigree. So if they can get two of these three guys, they're dancing in the streets. I think they've added to that position. And the other thing to keep in mind is Ostrenga played as a true freshman last year. He's going to be a junior by the time these guys get to campus. So, they're trying to keep, match up the eligibility as well to make sure they keep the room stocked, because it's such an important position here.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they have structured it. And, this year, Ostrenga is their third tight end, and he'll get some action. But, you have Cale Vanderbush, and then you also have Zach Ortworth coming in, and then Grant Leaper is gray shirting, I guess, but with the potential to have a scholarship depending on what happens in between now and the start of the season. And, you have Michael Burt, probably Eric Carner, Jalen Thompson, I think is a really good prospect. That that's a position that they identify, you could tell, as a premium more so than anybody else. So I think if they can get those guys, they'll be really happy. And as you mentioned with Hoffman, he's from Overland Park, Kansas, which is just the other side of the river. And Missouri, I know, has been after him pretty hard, and he's only 20 miles from KU and a couple hours from K-State. He'll have a good offer. He'll have a good opportunity, and it might still be Iowa too, for all we know.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, he could come here this weekend and just, mesh with all these guys. I was in talking to the guys in the 23 class recently. Who was it? I think it was Aiden Hall who said the official visit weekend last June with their group was among his best weekends of his life. Now he's 17 or 18 years old. He's got a lot of life left, but the point is they all really bonded during that. And that's the idea of this big official visit weekend for these guys every June. And so I would not be surprised if these guys have a similar experience, or most of them have the similar experience. And that can be enough to say, hey, this is the place for me. I mean, I love Missouri, and, I like Kansas and Kansas State. They're close. And those are the programs that, I have friends at, maybe, who I went to high school with, whatever. But Iowa, I mean, you can't beat the tight end tradition. And I dig hanging out with these guys.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it's probably going to be about meshing with the other players, because Iowa City this time of year, it's hard to beat it. It's the students aren't on campus, but it's still a pretty great place to be. But if you build a bond with a couple of dudes and you get along with them well, and that, again, those vibes, it's hard to take, that's what life is experiences with other people. And I think in his case, it's, whatever happens, but, and Iowa has a business to run. That's acquiring talent acquisition. So I think, however they decide to structure it, will be in decent shape. I mean, they've got 11 guys now. I'm sure going forward, they're going to limit their classes in size, just simply because of the portal. But, they've got plenty on campus. I think all 11 pledges are going to be here, and then they've got another 12 or 13, I think, that are coming in, and a lot of them seem to be, I won't say rubber stamped, but they have a really good chance. And I don't know if there are a couple that really stand out to you, Rob. I mean, I think the receivers are the ones that you've got to, to me, it's weird, even though he's not the highest rated, Reese Vanderzee to me is the one where it's like,
incredible athlete, just a really good athlete, and really has just starting to scratch the surface of his potential. I think the sky's the limit for the kid. I interviewed him last week, I think, or the week before, and he's pretty much down to Iowa and Iowa State. Yeah. And like we said, he's from Central Lyon. Played with Zach Lutmer last year. Graham Eben, his teammate, is coming in this week as well. So Iowa's doing well at that school, but Iowa State, if you're talking about wide receiver, at least right now, Iowa State is the more attractive program in terms of featuring wide receivers. But, Reese has a nice relationship with Iowa, and he also can be a part of, helping to turn the corner for this position. He's that type of cornerstone piece in this class that can help that. And I like Iowa's chances with him, and I really like him as an athlete. I mean, I think he led them in rebounding and was their second leading scorer in basketball. They won state championships in football and basketball this past season.
Right. I mean, he's 6'5". He's a little shy of 200, so he'll probably be 220 while he's at Iowa, 215, 220 if he's at Iowa. It's those vibes are helpful. I mean, we saw it last year because I think Kai Black was in some ways a little bit like that, kind of a big X receiver that could play tight end. And, but he was in Central Iowa. And when you start throwing on Jamison Patton and JJ Cole and Abu Samu and, guys like that, it's hard to get away from your friends, your peers, and high level athletes usually do hang out together. It's hard to get past that, but with Reese, having the again, Zach Lutmer, who was all everything last year and quarterback, and now he's going to play defensive back, but awesome basketball player, and those connections are really helpful. So, and it's kind of like almost in reverse what we saw somewhat with David Culker. He's committed to Iowa, like Kelvin Bell, but the opportunity to play early at Iowa State was part of what helped flip him over there.
And he was in that friendship group too with those guys.
Right.
So that also helped.
And being 25, 30 miles away is another thing. With Reese Vanderzee, you could say, look, you got an opportunity for playing time here. Nothing's written in stone, whereas, even Iowa State, they have a little bit more depth, I think, at that position. Not a ton. I mean, Xavier Hutchinson was great and nobody else really was. Jalen Knowles good, but so I think that Iowa has a chance to really solidify itself this weekend. That's a really good one to me. He's number one on my list of the players visiting. That him and Eric Garner, to me, are the ones. Go get those guys. The other ones, you want them, of course, but if you're going to prioritize, to me, those are the two priorities.
Yeah, KJ Parker is another guy from Eric Garner's high school, Immaculate Conception, which is the Matt Bowen is an assistant coach there, has been for a while. And then another interesting one is Jalen Watson.
Yeah.
Scott, Fred Russell's nephew from Toledo, Ohio. So interesting storylines for a lot of these kids.
Yeah. And
that's how Iowa recruits, right? It's about relationships and it's about networking a lot of times, whether it's, Matt Bowen at a high school or Fred Russell's nephew or whatever the case may be, or, Reese Vanderzee after getting Zach Lutmer and, recruiting Eben as well. So, I think Iowa has to do that. I think it benefits from that networking and calling on past relationships. And that's a good thing because you also have some more insight into these guys as well and what you're getting. And they have insight into what they're getting into.
You're right. And, Jalen Watson, a great example, as you mentioned, with Fred Russell, but also, his location. He was in Detroit. He was River Rogue and Harper Woods. I mean, Brennan Diaz-Fernandez, and they've gotten so many players from that part of the world, and that's Phil Parker land, where he could go anywhere there. And he's like Norm from Cheers, to date ourselves a little bit, but I think he's another good one. So Charlie Becker to me is a guy, from Tennessee that, it's kind of Iowa, Northwestern, Ole Miss.
I think it's probably Iowa or Northwestern. That's the vibe I'm getting from him, but and the only thing you worry about with somebody like that is, and this is the location. Yeah. That if he goes and has a great senior year in Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Auburn, whatever, in that part of the world decides we need another wide receiver, we just lost one or whatever, then, and then, Sage Clodges, from West, St. Thomas More. So anyway, to me, there's a lot of positives here. They've already got their offensive line. They're going to try to get another edge, maybe two edges. It might be a little challenging there. I think that's probably the one position where they're maybe fighting a little bit uphill this weekend, but they've got some, I wouldn't be surprised to see 4 guys maybe come out of this weekend. Maybe not in the first couple of days, but within the first 2, 4th of July-ish. Yeah. We could have 4 guys probably commit within that. Rashad Godfrey's an interesting one too, from Armwood Sefner. You folks, old Hawkeye fans, will remember Antoine Allen. That was his high school. So again, Iowa going back into an area that it's familiar with, and that's kind of in the Tampa area. That's Phil Parker. If you see maybe an under-recruited defensive back from either the Tampa area or the Detroit area, and Phil Parker is involved, you should feel good about whoever that guy is.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are 2 of his key areas. He doesn't recruit a ton because Kirk doesn't like to have his coordinators recruit a ton. But if Parker zeroes in on guys, there's usually a good reason.
Yeah, exactly. So, He's another good one, and one that I think it's between them basically in USF. So it's if he likes the idea of coming to Iowa that far away, he's going to come to Iowa. I mean, Boston College and Duke, come on, I mean, unless you've got a great connection there with a coach or recruiter, it's time to think about that. So
have a ton to talk about this next week after these kids get on campus and we get another week behind us. So we'll review and recap those visits next week. We'll probably have, as we said, the addition of Michael Burt and maybe some more guys that jump in right during the visit or right after before we record next Thursday. Now is probably a good time for us to take a break as we're going on about an hour, 50 minutes. And we got, let me see here. Get my read together here. I'm all unorganized. Support for this podcast comes from Systems Unlimited. You guys know that because I read this all the time. You would think I would have this committed, but I still have to bring it up. That's how mushy my brain is at 56. Support for this podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at SUI.org. That is SUI.org. Thank you to Systems Unlimited, doing great work in East Central Iowa, and we appreciate their support of the podcast. We also appreciate our other sponsors. We're going to hear from a few of them right now, and Scott and I will be back on the other side. Hang in there. We're back on the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. Look at that. We came back. We told you we were coming back, and we came back. Thank you to our sponsors. We appreciate it. Big night for Iowa basketball tonight, Scott. NBA draft, second year in a row. We're likely to hear a Murray's name called in the first round. We talked about this a little bit before we hit record on this podcast, but just I think almost take a step back and realize how amazing this story is with the Keegan and Chris Murray, the Murray twins, Kenyon, former Hawkeye player, their dad, what he did to develop them. They had very little interest coming out of Cedar Rapids Prairie. They go to prep school. They end up at Iowa, almost as I remember people were upset. There were the faction of the families was upset that Iowa was settling for the Murray twins.
Right.
Right. And now, to think of that path, you don't see that a lot, especially in basketball. These kids get identified so early on and offered so early on. Even more than football, there are so many football players. Obviously, the roster size is so much different. But basketball, it's not common that guys slip through the cracks like this or have to continue to prove themselves and make it to this level. So congratulations to the Murray family. We'll see where Chris goes. We had a better feel for Keegan last year that he was going to be a lottery pick, the top end of that lottery. Chris, we're hearing – I haven't looked at the Athletic mock draft yet, but we're hearing like late teens, early to mid 20s for him. It just seems like there's a wide range for him.
Yeah, it could go anywhere, and it's really, it's a complete question mark with Keegan. It was just a matter of, okay, is it going to be 4 through 8, just so you had an idea of, and then you could kind of start plotting out like what's his, where does he really fit, among those teams. And, and then of course there's always the trades part of, it seems like there are probably like 8 trades during the night of so-and-so, comes up, wears a hat, shakes Adam Silver's hand, and next thing you know, it's like, oh, we need to give you a different hat. So, and looking at, a couple of our mocks, John Hollinger has him, I think 29th to so that goes to Indiana, and then Zach, we have other ones too. So
that would be hilarious if he was at Indiana with Connor McCaffrey as an assistant coach.
Yeah, exactly. And so I imagine Connor's going to be more of a gopher.
Yes, definitely starting on the bottom. Yeah. And working his way up. But one of the coolest things or interesting things about this, Scott, too, is you've got the Lakers and Golden State kind of in that area that he could end up at too, which would be kind of probably surreal for him, playing with like Steph Curry and that group, or LeBron. So
LeBron, yeah. And Sam Vanessa, who's probably the one that I'd follow the most out of us. I mean, we have a ton, but he has him 19 to Golden State. And so when you start going, I could go to Miami, Golden State, the Lakers at 16 or 17. Is it 16 or 17? 17. There's Utah Jazz. Just, there's so many possibilities for him. And of course, then at 24, imagine him reuniting with his brother. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, interesting. It could be really interesting storylines here. I get the sense from reading Scott, and this isn't a surprise because he's old. He's 23. That's old for the NBA draft. You're looking at guys that were playing in the G League or overseas or played 1 year of college. So that's the knock on him, really. And he's a safe pick, is what you hear. You know what you're getting. He's a safe pick. The ceiling may not be there of some of the other guys in this draft. And that's really what he is, I don't want to say fighting or battling against, but that's what he's up against is a team going to take a guy that's 18 or 19 with potential and a high ceiling, or know what you get. And I think that's why he would fit good with Golden State or the Lakers or Sacramento, teams that were in the playoffs this year, but add another piece to the rotation.
Yeah, I don't know. And that's really a good point, because it's really about each individual team, and, to compare it, it's hard to compare the NBA draft with like the NFL draft, because first round is really important, but sometimes like a Jack Campbell is, okay, does he have the, you project him at 40, but he goes at 19, is that a big deal?
And you saw the yin and the yang of that too, right?
Yeah,
Van Ness, and then you got Campbell. Yeah. One guy who's an All-American, one guy who didn't start. We know there's nuance to that, but Green Bay went with the upside there. They were like, we're going for the guy that's got, younger and maybe more room to grow, whereas Detroit's like, we want to make a move. We need that sure thing. And you don't know who's going to be better in the NFL. It's too early to tell, and it's different philosophies.
Right. And with basketball, it's the same way. I mean, it's such a transient sport. There's so many players that move around, and after the lottery picks, it's really difficult to really judge who's going to be an all rookie team member, who's going to be a starter, who's going to be just a guy, who's going to be a rotation guy, and who's going to go up and down, and with a two-way contract. Yeah. And then when you get in the second round, it's really that way. It's a crapshoot. A lot of them just go to Europe and play for a while and then come back. But I think in his case, if you want him to be, your eighth guy, he's perfect for that role now. And, maybe the one thing going for him is when you look at Keegan and now you look at him, he's older, but he's also a late bloomer. And, as you said, when he's at Prairie, I mean, Keegan had an offer to Western. I don't know if he did, Chris did, but then they went prep school, then they came into Iowa. Everybody thought it was a gift, especially with Chris. And then he redshirted a year, which doesn't happen all that often, especially to gifted players. And then played sparingly, and then had a big season. And I think it's really about how they envision him. And I think part of that could be making sure he, if he fits in a rotation on a good team, I think that's probably perfect for him. Maybe a Golden State, especially now that Draymond Green's leaving. He's not Draymond Green at all in any way, shape, or form, but maybe he can replace some of that production off the bench. And then that would mean Kenyon and family might have to move somewhere between, San Francisco and Sacramento, out there in California.
Yeah, I think the safe also results from the high character guys. He and Keegan are high character guys. They work their ass off, very intense work ethic. So I'm with you. I think it would be a mistake for teams to think that these guys aren't going to get better. Even as good as Keegan was this year, there's still room, and there's plenty of room for Chris too, because as you said, late bloomers and, didn't have a ton of college between the two of them. Both of them really had 1 year of being the guy in college.
Yeah, exactly. And so, Chris has some things probably against him a little bit, and you don't know if it's just, what happened, at Iowa. Sometimes I know, there's a question of, how do I say this? Softness. That's an NBA. A lot of people, scouts and stuff, have said. So he's going to have to overcome that. But, whereas Keegan didn't have that as much, but Keegan had better pieces around him too. And was able to kind of use those pieces, including Chris. He had Chris. Chris didn't have Keegan. So I think there's a lot there that, but overall, it's still a huge night if you think about it for Iowa to have back-to-back first-round draft picks, to have 4 in the last couple of years, Wieskamp and Garza, and now these guys. And I mean, it's a feather in their cap, and of course, with that also draws attention to how did you not get to the second weekend when you had all this talent?
Yeah, you hear that for both, right? How does Iowa football produce all these NFL players, but they're not winning Big Ten championships? And why isn't the basketball team? But I think, certainly there's criticisms of Fran, but I think one of the good things he's done is he's shown you can get to the league by going to Iowa. And for a lot of years, that was not something you could sell.
Yeah. I mean, Dev Marble was the first to really do that, and you had a Utah and, Tyler Cook, even if you're undrafted, you've got that opportunity, but now they're getting drafted and they're getting to the first round and they're getting statistics and high accolades at the University of Iowa. So I think that's, something that they could show. It's just a matter of now being able to show it. And this year is going to be a challenge for that. But getting back to Chris, tonight's going to be his night. It's going to be really fun. I'm interested that, he's going to be coming back and decide he turned down the opportunity to do it live, and he decided to do it with his family. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Best of luck to Chris. Hopefully he and his family enjoy the night. He's already been through this draft night thing once with his brother. Now he gets to experience it himself. Staying on that topic, Scott announced their foreign trip this summer, Paris, and where are they going? Italy?
I think it's Spain, isn't it?
Spain, you're right. Yeah, I knew it was old Europe, somewhere over there. Spain, Italy. I'm going to get in here and offend some people. I haven't offended anybody on this podcast. I want to offend some people.
Yeah, let's not do that. But the women are going to Italy and Croatia.
That's where I had it mixed up.
Yeah, and they're going to Paris and Barcelona. So
I did see we got an email here too, Scott, while we were on. You want to hit that?
Yeah, the women's basketball opponents for next year have come out, and Iowa for the Big Ten, and Iowa women will play Indiana twice, Indiana, Ohio State, Nebraska, Minnesota, and Wisconsin all twice. Home only, Illinois, Michigan, Michigan State, and Penn State, and away on the road only, Maryland, Northwestern, Purdue, and Rutgers. So, Indiana, Iowa, home and home. That's a big one. Ohio State, home and home. That's a big one. Wisconsin, no. Minnesota, no. And then Nebraska, it could be. I mean, they had their biggest crowd in history for Caitlin Clark last year, and so they'll probably have another nice one. As long as the football players, of course, tell them to go to the game like they did this year.
Yeah, it's a bummer that they only get Maryland once, but that's
No.
it's cyclical, and you kind of have to go through that. It sucks that they have to go. They're two of their one plays on the road are friggin' Maryland and Rutgers.
Yeah.
Two of the longest trips. But hey, that's going to prepare you for when USC and UCLA come in next year, and you're going to have to go the other way.
Right. Well, with Maryland, that's only the first time they're scheduled to play.
Right.
That was a good freaking team last year. I mean, they crushed Iowa out there, and then in the tournament, that was a great game too. And it wouldn't have surprised me if Maryland would have gotten to the Final Four either. I mean, they were dynamite, and they'll be good again. So I would expect I would put money on Iowa and Maryland playing again at some point. Maybe it's the Big Ten tournament, or maybe it's the NCAA tournament, Sweet 16, because if they only play once, then they can play earlier in the tournament. But either way, dynamic schedule. Iowa, and I think there was some strategy there with the road games, single plays, because if you can get Iowa to Chicago, to play Northwestern's not very good, but at least you're in the Chicago market, maybe, and you're in the New York market with Rutgers. So now you have a chance to build some sort of, some sort of local interest with having the most impactful women's basketball player in history.
Could be a really good league again too, Scott. Yeah. As you mentioned, Indiana's going to be good again. Ohio State will be good. Maryland's always good. The Michigans are usually pretty competitive. So we'll see. Purdue has had some up and down teams, but this should be a very strong, deep league again, and Iowa should be right there in the mix, and certainly will be the most coveted from a media standpoint, in terms of TV and attention and exposure. Iowa's going to get. They got a lot last year. It's going to be even more this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And setting up the single play, against Virginia Tech and Charlotte. This is a team that everybody wants to see, and this is a player everybody wants to watch. So
how many openings are there still? I know you FOIA'd the schedule. How many non-cons do we not know yet, roughly?
It would be
so there's a chance, because the reason I ask is there's a chance for some more marquee games to be added here.
They have an exempt tournament. I'm not, nothing's been finalized there. I don't know if it's 4 games or 3, so that's going to be part of it. And then you've got just not finalized yet. It'll be Iowa State and Drake, but they go to UNI. So I think Drake comes to Iowa City, and then go to Iowa State, and then they have their exempt tournament. So I don't know if there's any more after that.
Okay.
But Kansas State comes to town.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good one as well.
Yeah. So Kansas State, Virginia Tech, the exempt tournament, whoever they play in that. Last year they went out to Oregon, played UConn and stuff. So I would expect there's going to be some. I mean, this is a team that.
I'd like to see. It would be cool if they could get South Carolina, LSU, UConn, one of those teams on the regular season schedule, but they may not. It may not work. Maybe it's in the exempt tournament. Who knows?
Yeah, gosh, I always thought, what I would do or think about is some sort of a classic at Madison Square Garden called like the Vivian Stringer Classic, and have Rutgers, maybe Maryland, Iowa, South Carolina, LSU, UConn, maybe even smaller schools too.
Somebody out west, one of the Stanford,
have like 4 games around the clock, there in Madison Square Garden or something, and celebrate one of the great coaches of any sport, and give her a great legacy. Maybe something on, and I'm only spitballing, but maybe on Martin Luther King Day. if you could do something like that, I think that'd be great. Or Brooklyn, or
Mhm.
just Newark. But but anyway, that's just an idea I had, and I think that would be great. And if you could
Yep.
get
We
Iowa,
talked about, strike while the iron's hot.
Mhm.
It's hot right now with women's basketball.
For sure. And if you could get, it could be LSU, or hell, it could be UConn with Paige Buchers, and Iowa with Caitlin Clark. That's a game everybody wants to see.
Yep, no doubt. We got some baseball news yesterday, Scott. This is not totally unexpected. Sam Honar, the Iowa second baseman, and now had entered the transfer portal recently. Had a lot of interest, obviously, had a really nice season for Iowa this year as a sophomore. He is headed to Maryland, and our colleague Pat Hardy, who works for Hawk Fanatic, who is the host of this podcast, pretty much said in talking with the people over at Iowa baseball, this is NIL driven. He paid for school as an out-of-state Illinois kid for 2 years, and we know scholarships are limited in baseball. And also, when you go after some of the top end recruits, you have to give them more money. It's a really tough puzzle for Iowa right now, problem for Iowa right now. It's not part of the Swarm Collective. It's just women's basketball, men's basketball, football. Iowa baseball needs something here. They need, and hopefully the new athletic director can maybe foster this to say, who are our top baseball supporters? Who are our biggest donors? Who can help us here? But something needs to be done for these Olympic sports as well if you want to compete. If you don't want to compete and you don't mind losing people like Sam Honar, then you can continue on the way you're doing it.
Yeah, it's really like a lot of holes in the dike, and you're just pushing your fingers in which ones, because this is a totally different revenue stream that was never, and it's never happened before. And now you're asking your donors to pay more, and then also pay the athletic department. They don't want to lose any money there. So this is going to be interesting, because it's going to be about, if let's say I've got 10,000, I'm a businessman, I've got $10,000 I'm going to spend on Iowa athletics, not counting my season tickets, but for donations, for iClub, for all that. Now I've got the Swarm Collective, and I want the football team to win some championships, and I love basketball too. And excuse me, I hope baseball does well. And I hope Tom Brand's can win the national title. You've got a lot of things you got to put yourself into. And it's almost like, I think what would make sense is wrestling can probably do it on its own.
Yeah, it's such a, you look and go to Carver and see that place packed. They have a lot of support. Not the same with baseball. Look how long it's taken for baseball to get a facilities upgrade.
Yeah, right. If they had like a Iowa Sticks Collective it wouldn't be Sticks, Ping Collective.
I like that. I like the Ping Collective. Ping.
Yeah, Ping for baseball and softball. Because look at what Nebraska just did with Jordy Ball. For man, that's a massive move on softball. I mean, just, you don't get bigger than that with her. So I think that's. I
don't know how much, like, if there are any like prominent baseball supporters that the athletic department can kind of maybe put in charge of driving something like this, or softball, or there needs to be some type of organization. We're into this, the second summer of this, and there's no real organization for the Olympic sports.
Well, yeah, but they would have no organization at all if it wasn't for grassroots.
Right.
If it wasn't for Brad Heinrichs putting in $100K on his own
so
money.
Who's the Brad Heinrichs for some of these Olympic sports? And maybe you have to downsize it a little bit and say it's a smaller group. Fundraising,
yeah,
autograph sales, do, some of the creative things that Brad's been able to do, you may need to do for the other sports. And yeah, there are a lot less people. It's not near as popular, but there has to be a way to help.
No question. And the baseball supporters have come through with singular donations at times, like, all right, I'll donate $15,000 towards this, towards the new stadium, whatever, but not consistently for that. And this is what the next challenge for the next athletic director is, how to do more with less when it comes to your athletics department, because ultimately, people have donated all these years and they've just spent every damn dime they've gotten, on new facilities and whatever. But once this dynamic has changed, Rob, since we've gone from spend every dime you can because you have to now going, the players get their money, you're going to have to decide, should you direct some of your donations towards collectives and ensure you have competitive athletes, or continue to do it for facility improvements? Well, we've all known now that the option's there. If your players at least have a decent facility, they want to get paid. That's most important. You don't need to have water fountains and that shoot up M&Ms in the locker room, and stuff. It's just, is it nice? Yeah, okay, then they want to get paid. So whoever's next is going to have to understand that philosophy and not look at themselves in some sort of a confrontational relationship, which is kind of what Gary Barta has done. He still has never talked to Brad Heinrichs. So then you start talking about baseball in this situation. And baseball is really, really important to a lot of Southern schools. And Maryland is in the Big Ten, operates kind of like a Southern school in some ways, except in football where it operates like a Northeastern school. But you're going to have to keep your eyes open for what may be coming.
It's that balancing act right now with your budget. You've got all this new money coming in for media rights. So now you've got that kind of nest egg, if you will. How much of that can how much of that covers everyday expenses, coaches' salaries, things like that? And how much, as you were saying earlier, can you direct donor funds towards these collective? It is a tough equation, but that's how you make it work. And that's, to me, in the future, how you succeed, is how the teams and universities and athletic departments that can best manage this will probably find the most success on the field.
Mm-hmm. And there are so many mutually beneficial ways, Rob, for this to work that Iowa has not explored, that a lot of people haven't explored because it's still relatively new. But, whether it's with businesses, things such as, on commercials, Iowa's players could still appear on them, but then also you could have Cade McNamara, let's say, on McGrath Autos, telling you to buy cars, and then, hey, come watch me play, and make it mutually beneficial, and saying, get your tickets now while, maybe even here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, have somebody, he has an autograph signing at an auto lot, Billion Auto, whatever, take your pick. And then, oh, by the way, you have somebody there from the ticket office willing to say, hey, come on, sign up, watch me play. And, so there's all kinds of these mutually beneficial opportunities that have never been taken up, and so the players have to be invested and involved, and as do, to make sure it works. I think they will. This California trip, the Swarm is developing and finalizing a marketing plan right now to ensure that it was paid for. And I think it might be like burrito oriented, but which who doesn't, but hey, I'd do that too.
The way to the heart is through the stomach, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like promoting Chipotle or somebody like that. But but see, that's what it's about. It's like
they're just and at the base, at the foundation of all this, Scott, is there just needs to be a better relationship between the athletic department and the collective or collectives.
Yeah, right. So to me, if it's a ping collective for the stick sports, or if it's wrestling can operate on its own. I mean, and I don't mean that detrimentally at all. It just has enough power.
It's just got a very strong support base.
Yeah. They could just do, I mean, they have like the polar plunge and stuff. I mean, they could have all kinds of different events. Shoot, they could have like sponsor hunting weekends with some of these wrestlers. And
yeah.
They would be all in. Now, when you get beyond the ping sports and maybe even volleyball, then you're getting into a different level. I think after those 7, track is kind of different. And, how do you pay for that? That's going to be up to that's going to be interesting. That's going to be singular. Golf and
field hockey.
Yeah, field hockey. And
tennis.
So gymnastics.
Yeah.
And, so those are ones that, again, you can't put it all under one collective, because let's face it, Iowa fan, it's survival of the fittest.
You know what gives me hope, though, Scott? Sorry to interrupt. When we saw the swimming campaign to try to save swimming, those people rallied around and raised money.
Yeah.
So that would give me hope that other non-revenue Olympic sports might. I know that was an extreme circumstance, but if there's support out there like that, that's how you have to rally it.
You know what? God damn it. I wish they'd bring back men's swimming. I guess I understand men's gymnastics. It was a dying sport nationally at this level. I understand men's tennis to some extent, because a lot of the people were foreign and what have you. But men's swimming, I mean, the butterfly stroke was invented in Iowa City.
Yeah.
That one to me was like, oh, that's a gut punch there. And you do have an incredible pool still, and we're going to host NCAA. I still think in retrospect that was stupid. I would love to see a new athletic director be able to say, yeah, let's try to bring this back. If we can have a fundraising campaign, maybe do it out of the public limelight, but contact all those people and said, hey, you know what? The mistakes were made. They weren't by me, though. Let's try to see if we can make that work. And to me, that's what I would definitely try to do. If I was the athletic director, I would do it that one.
And you can, I mean, that's the support is there. It's there for swimming. I think if somebody were to say to the Iowa baseball fan, hey, we're going the wrong direction here, we need support. I do believe that there are groups in each of these sports. I don't know how many and how much they can raise, but I do believe there's support at a core level that could help these sports, at least some.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just, off the top of my head, you think about stuff like, if you have a cookout at Dwayne Banks before the game, and all the money goes straight to the baseball team, and dispersing for money for them and stuff, because you're going to have to, it's one thing to lose, Sam Hodner, as a second baseman. You feel like, okay, it's a good player. It sucks we lost him. You could probably find somebody who can play comparably. But what happens if an SEC school comes after Brody Brecht and says, let's take care of that arm, man. We can get you playing year round. We can take care of, we got the best coach at LSU or at Florida or Tennessee or something like that. And then he's a 1-year rental anyway, because he's going to go to the draft. But then they give him money. I mean, you're asking him to go with his heart over his head, and that just doesn't work. Or Marcus Morgan, for that matter. That's where it's going to get really difficult for Iowa to keep up, and that's probably what it's going to take for the message to be sent, and it's not one we want to have. So I think right now they've got to be cognizant of this going forward.
Yeah, no doubt. It's, as we've talked about many times on this podcast, Scott, it's just ever evolving. It's, the NIL and all this stuff is just continuing, and it's going to continue to evolve, and you're going to have schools look for loopholes and all that stuff. And you got to keep up with the Joneses. You really do. And Iowa, I think, has done well with football and the Swarm Collective, but I think it's going to need more for the other sports at some point, and hopefully the change in leadership in the athletic department can help make that happen.
Yeah, because the revenue that they're going to get from the Big Ten is not going to be sizable, at least immediately. It's about $5 extra million a year, which, yeah, that's a lot of money, but it's not that much. It's not like they went from $57 million to 77. It's like 62 million, 63 million. So they're going to, that's, when you borrowed $50 million from the university, when you have no funds to pay for stuff because of past lawsuits and whatever, so they're operating from a little bit of a deficit, but it requires some new ways of thinking and
creativity,
and it's not just the same old, and it very well could be as simple, and I mean as simple as when you host an iClub event, that you make sure that the collective's there too, and the collective has a voice, and the collective has a table, and here's what you can get with the collective to go along with it, because they don't have to be adversarial. They should be working hand in hand, because what happens on the field directly impacts what happens for the athletic department. And when you're trying to pit the two between them and you're not working together, then you have situations like you do now where, football has done really well with the collective, and fans have flocked to that, but you need the other sports to be taken care of. And that's when you need that push from the athletic department, and that's been non-existent.
And you get pushed back.
Yeah. Right.
Or just ignored and not, there's no relationship there. That can't work. That's not sustainable.
Right. You need a partnership there, Rob. You need somebody there to understand that more donations come in if I go out and I say, go to the collective and help us win games. Because if Fran McCaffrey's team beats Auburn and goes to and then eventually ends up in the Sweet 16, your fan base is charged up. It's ready to go. Maybe that's one more player. Maybe that's it. Yeah. Just one more player in basketball. Or maybe it's not Cade Mack. Maybe it's Caleb Brown in football. That'll be the difference between going to Indianapolis and competing and going to Indianapolis and getting slaughtered. And so the athletic director should be all on board on that. And well, he wasn't. And that was probably the last of that was one of the main reasons why I think he's retiring.
No doubt. And I have high hopes for whoever replaces him, whether it's Beth Getz or somebody else, to have a little bit more creativity in this area and is a little bit more willing to work with the student athletes and the collectives and all that stuff. So hopefully we see that moving forward. Have I missed anything, Scott? You usually can alert me of things we may not have discussed that we need to discuss.
I don't think so, Rob. I think we've covered just about everything.
Yeah, I think we hit everything as well. We're an hour and a half in, so that lets me know that we've discussed quite a bit, and we've had 2 podcasts this week that have kind of lasted that long. So as we said, there is no downtime. There is no off season. And Michael Burt will be announcing his decision in about 19 minutes. So it's a good time for us to put a pin in this.
Yeah.
So news can break on the Iowa beat.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll be able to talk about it next week, Rob.
Yep, no doubt. And I still need to catch up on the last 2 episodes of Mayans too. So was away last week and didn't get to it last night. So that's going to be my order of business this weekend.
My last night, I was getting ready to watch it and I fell asleep and I couldn't, I was like, I was wiped out. I don't know why, it just was. And so, about 15 minutes into it, I'm like trying to watch and I'm like, you know what, I'm DVRing it anyway. Just do it at another time later today or whatever. So
been there, done that. All right, folks, we appreciate you listening to the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. Special thanks to all of our sponsors for supporting the podcast. You can get most weeks a fresh Hawk-centric podcast Monday through Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the flagship with Pat Hardy. Tuesdays, my mailbag, and Thursdays, Scott and I do the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. So if you're looking for Hawk talk, we got you covered during the business week. So tune in, check out the feed. We've got other special podcasts, prospect podcasts, and things like that. Hope to do some prospect podcasts with some of the kids that are committed, taking their official visits this weekend to get some reaction to how that went. So check it out for that. Until we talk to you again, be well and whatever. Have a good weekend. Stay away from the heat, all that good stuff. Say goodbye, Scott.